Hi, I'm Kirsty Harms. I am the Executive Director of the Native Prairies Association of Texas, and I'm here on our Lothar Deer Park Prairie doing a fall walk. It's October, and as you can see, the goldenrod are in full bloom, and we've got fields of swamp sunflower. There's a heavy dew right now. It's morning, and we'll take you for a little tour of all our grasses, which fall is a great time to look at our grasses. Native prairies are a mix of grasses and flowering plants. Our Lothar Deer Park Prairie has over 300 species of plants. Remnant prairies have a high level of native plant diversity. Those plants have been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Because of this high biodiversity, prairies are able to feed all the insects and animals that live there or come to visit. This biodiversity also assures that the prairie can survive natural disasters. The Native Prairies Association of Texas is working to preserve and restore prairies across the state of Texas. We also work to help people understand why they're important. They're a part of our natural heritage. Deer Park Prairie has a lot of grasses. It also has the big four prairie grasses. Those include big bluestem, yellow Indian grass, switchgrass, and little bluestem. It also has a pink blooming grass that's called Gulf muley. Big bluestem is one of the big four prairie grasses, and one of the other names for big bluestem is turkeyfoot because it looks like it has feet when it blooms. And it's a very tall prairie grass. You can tell that it's as tall as I am. So this is one of the tall big four prairie grasses. It's switchgrass, and it gets very tall too, just like big bluestem. Little bluestem is probably called that because it is kind of a blue-green color when it comes up in the spring. The blades of grass are kind of a sagey green. But in the fall, it starts to turn kind of a copper color when it blooms and goes to seed. And those fluffy white things you see coming out of it are actually the seeds. One of the best times to study grasses is in the fall because that's when a lot of our native grasses are in bloom and it's easier to tell what they are. One of the common coastal prairie grasses is Gulf muley. It turns into waves of pink in the fall. This grass is very hard to photograph because it's so delicate. This grass here is bushy bluestem. And you can tell why it's called that because it looks pretty bushy. Usually it likes to have its feet wet, so it grows in wetter areas. Even grasses have flowers. If you look close, you can see the flowering parts when they're in bloom. Grass flowers are called inflorescences. This flower is from eastern gamagrass. It's a large grass that grows on prairies too. It likes wet areas and it is a distant relative of corn. Prairies have many grasses and plants that have really deep roots. They go way down into the soil. This is important because when it rains, prairies can absorb a lot of water and help prevent flooding. They also help filter water because the water is run through the ground instead of eroding off the top. The coastal prairies are very important because the coast gets a lot of rain and there can be serious flooding events. It's early October, and we found that the swamp sunflowers are in full bloom all over the place. This is one of the fall blooming asters. Flowers in the aster or sunflower family often look like some kind of daisy. What looks like one flower is actually made up of a bunch of small flowers. Texas has a lot of flowers that are in this plant family. Prairies can also look very golden in the fall. That's usually because of the fall blooming asters. Many of them are yellow. This is the giant ragweed. As you can tell, it's big, but the flowers are not big. They're small. You can hardly even see them. But there are little flower parts there. So when this is in bloom, usually the goldenrod is in bloom as well. And people think that's what's making them sneeze. But really, this is what's making them sneeze. And the difference between these two flowers is ragweed is wind pollinated. The pollen is in the air and it's probably getting up your nose and in your eyes. Whereas goldenrod, it's insect pollinated. That's why it's got a flower and a scent and a color, and it's meant to attract insects. The pollen, even though if you stuck your nose right in it, you probably might sneeze, but the pollen is not flying around in the air like the ragweed pollen is. Gayfeather or prairie blazing star puts on a big show in late summer and fall. It's also in the Aster family, but it blooms kind of a purple lavender color, and it is very popular with insects. This little blue flower is a salvia, which is a sage is the common name. And Salvia azurea is one of the prairie fall blooming salvias. Plants in the mint family, like this bush mint that blooms in the fall, have square stems, and they're often very aromatic. Sometimes if you look way down in the prairie, you'll see some little short plants. This is called frog fruit. It is a really nice ground cover. It will work in your yard in a certain amount of shade. It stays low to the ground, and insects like it. Prairies aren't just gold. They also have pink and purple flowers. Sometimes they're a little more hidden, and you have to look for them. The common name of this white flower is bee blossom, probably because insects love this flower, and it looks a little bit like a butterfly. This is downy lobelia. It's one of the plant species that is at risk of extinction in the coastal prairie ecosystem. Much of the original coastal prairie has disappeared to development and agriculture. Of the original 9 million acres, less than 1% remains. That's why it's important to save the prairies that exist today. The name of this plant is Rattlesnake Master. If you see these growing in a field, you're probably looking at a native prairie and one that's never been plowed. It's also very attractive to insects. It is a very good plant for pollinators. This plant is called snow on the prairie. It blooms in late summer in parts of Texas, especially on prairies and pastures, and it can create fields of white flowers that look like snow. The many plants that are native to our coastal prairies, while they are very beautiful, are actually extremely important to our native insect and pollinator populations. There is a lot of concern about the rapid decline of our insects. Native Texas prairies are often at their best from late summer into fall. The plants that bloom during this time help feed our insects, and those include the migrating monarch butterflies. Texas is in the pathway of the migrating monarch butterfly as it heads to Mexico in the fall. So all these Aster family plants, like this goldenrod, are extremely important for them as a food source. Our native insects and pollinators have evolved with our native coastal prairie plants over thousands of years. These insects have adapted to the nectar, pollen, sap, and the defensive chemicals that are created by the plant. This leaf-footed squash bug gets his nourishment by sucking the sap from a plant. Plants that are native to other continents, like many of our popular landscape plants, are not good food sources for our native butterflies, bees, and other insects. When they encounter these landscape plants in our yards, such as this crepe myrtle, they are encountering a food desert. So in order to protect our pollinators, it is important to supplement your yard or school landscape with a few native plants. You don't need a large area to create a pocket prairie, and they can serve as a science class on your school campus. Most of our native bees don't live in hives. They are often solitary and they live in the ground or in old wood. And most don't sting while they're foraging for nectar or pollen, such as this carpenter bee on a gara flower. Honeybees, which are from Europe, they often sting to protect their young in the hive, so don't disturb them. If you're out on the prairie on a dewy morning, like Deer Park Prairie is very dewy in the morning sometimes, you'll be able to see how many spiders live on the prairie, because you can see their webs when they're covered in dew. I actually love looking at spider webs in the dew. Deer Park Prairie is kind of a wet prairie, so you'll often see dragonflies in a bunch of different colors flying around over the prairie. They hover over the prairie because they are hunters, and they will often kill pest insects like mosquitoes. This is the adult Gulf fritillary butterfly feeding on a blue mist flower. This flower is very popular with butterflies. The Gulf fritillary is a very common butterfly sighting in the fall at Deer Park Prairie. The top of his wings look very different than the underside, as seen here feeding on the nectar of a red sage flower. Here you see the Gulf fritillary in both instar and caterpillar stages. This caterpillar feeds exclusively on the native passion flower or passion vine. So now you've seen a prairie in bloom, you've seen the insects that feed on the flowers in the prairie. So what's next? Well, all those flowers go to seed or they produce berries. Those become food for birds and other small animals that live on the prairie. Texas prairies, like a lot of other natural areas around the world, have different groups of birds that are around at different times of year. The resident birds at Deer Park Prairie can usually find something to eat at any time of year. Another group of birds are our summer resident birds. They come in the spring, they breed, and then they leave in the fall to go south. They often eat insects, so that's why they're here in the summer. Some of the most obvious summer birds are the scissortail flycatchers. You can see them in grassland areas in the summertime. Texas has a lot of birds that come down for the winter. These birds migrate from their breeding grounds in the north as far as Canada. The seeds and fruit from all those flowers on Texas prairies provide food for grassland birds, especially sparrows like this LeConte sparrow and this Savannah sparrow. To provide good habitat for wildlife, including birds, you'll need to provide water, food, and shelter. Raptors are also known as birds of prey. They hunt other animals, including birds. The daytime raptors include hawks, eagles, and falcons. The nighttime raptors are owls. Some raptors can be seen year-round at Deer Park Prairie, like red-shouldered hawks and the red-tailed hawk. Some raptors are there mostly in the wintertime, like the northern harrier that hunts by cruising low over the prairie, or the American kestrel, which is also known as a sparrowhawk because it hunts small birds. We hope you can make it out to Deer Park Prairie some fall so you too can see the flowers and the grasses in bloom and the insects that like to visit them, as well as the birds that come to live there in the wintertime. We hope to see you soon.
Hi, My name is Della Barbado, and I'm the Director of Education for the Houston chapter of Native Prairies Association of Texas. And here we are at Deer Park Prairie. Deer Park Prairie is about 35 miles east of downtown Houston, and it is a remnant prairie. That means that it has never been plowed and it's never been developed. So the plants that live here have evolved here and have been here for thousands of years. What native plants do is they attract our wild insects. This land's never been touched, so the insects and the plants have evolved here together. Today, we're going to be going out into Deer Park Prairie, and we are going to be netting insects. So what we're going to get is maybe some grasshoppers and katydids and butterflies, but they're all wild. So let's go get some wild.
This is them. Still got a little bit of growing to do. They're very similar to grasshoppers. You can see their legs are much wirier, longer. This little guy is a baby praying mantis. Praying mantis have the front two legs that look like they're praying when they hold them up close, and that's what they use to grab insects. There's a little green lacewing. Most native bees are solitary. The bumblebees, they will nest in the ground, more in a colony. But most of our native bees are potter wasps, leaf cutters. All those are solitary. And usually you can get close and not get stung. They're too busy doing their bee thing. But if you get too close to a honeybee hive, then you get stung. They swarm.
So they only are protecting their young.
Alright, this is called the Eastern Pondhawk. This is a female. These are our most plentiful and common dragonfly that we have probably in Harris County. Dragonflies are voracious hunters, both in the larva stage, which live in the water, and also as the adult stage. You can see the jaws, you can see it biting, and even as larvae, they are very predacious. They have a lower jaw that can extend about a third of their body in a millisecond and catch little fish and little bugs underwater. You can see their legs have little spines on them, and as they fly, they can make like a little basket with their legs and catch bugs in the air. The eyes will almost touch and make up just about most of the head, whereas damselflies, which are kin to dragonflies, their eyes are on the ends and they never touch or come close. Like I say, this is a female Eastern Pondhawk. You can tell that because she's green and because of her ovipositor at the end of her abdomen. The males start out green and then turn blue. And once again, what makes an insect, we've got a head, a thorax, and that's where the legs attach, and then the abdomen. And this is a little male blue dasher.
Insects are very interesting to study. And if you would like to study them in your yard, all you have to do is plant some native plants. Remember, whenever you are choosing plants to go in your garden or your front or backyard, or even your pocket prairie on your schoolyard habitat, plants that are native to your area are always the best for local pollinators and insects. And when you buy them, make sure that they have not been treated with insecticides. Well, I hope you have enjoyed studying these insects as much as I have. In this time, it is hard to find something fun and educational to do. Well, I've got a solution. I have an activity that will not only solve your boredom problem, but your observations will go into an international database that will say that these things were right here at this time. And look at this pretty purple flower. You don't have to know what it is. All you have to do is take a picture of it. Observations posted on the iNaturalist app during the 4-day challenge, April 24th to April 27th, will automatically be counted for the City Nature Challenge 2020 for the area where you observe. It will also be geolocated. This means that it will be documented as being found on that spot on that day, and will be research data for anyone to see and use. How do I participate? It's easy. First, download the iNaturalist app onto your smartphone. Then, find a wild species that you would like to observe. You don't have to know what it is. The community will help you to identify it through the iNaturalist app. Whether it is a plant, or an insect, or a spider, or a reptile, or an amphibian, any one of those will do and are considered part of the wild community, unless it was planted intentionally. Most important thing is safety. Do not gather amongst other people for this activity. Only participate with the loved ones that you are quarantined with. The best places to photograph and record wild species are your backyard, nearby park, or waterway. If you do encounter other people, smile and say hello, but stay at least 6 feet away from them. A famous African-American tennis player named Arthur Ashe once said, "Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can." So where you are is your backyard. What you have is your smartphone and the iNaturalist app. And what you can do is take photographs of wild things. There is no wrong or right way to do this.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Westphere, and I am a Texas Master Naturalist of the Coastal Prairie chapter. I'm Della's friend also. We love iNaturalist. iNaturalist helps you to find out what something is. Like for instance, what is that? That looks like a big pokey thing. You know, and we find a lot of things when we really look down. Like right next to this pokey thing, look what I found. It's so tiny. We can take a picture of it. So we're in my garden, and I have this pretty little flower that I planted. I know what it is, but let's just say that I didn't know what it was, and I wanted to see what it's called using the iPhone or the Android app called iNaturalist. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my app, and I'm going to touch the button called Observed at the bottom, and it's going to open up a camera. Now I like to pinch it a little bit so that it zooms in nicely, and then I turn it to the side, and I hold my flower into the sun, and then I take a nice crisp picture. Then I tap next, and right under the flower is "What did you see?" It gives me a list of things that it could be, and not all of them grow in this area. But I'm going to look at the information part of the Indian blanket on top, and when I scroll down, I'm going to see that there are a lot of observations all over the United States of America, particularly here in Texas where we are. So that is the one that I'm going to select. And then I'm going to share it. And it's easy as that. All right, so we have a sunflower that just came up today, and I don't know what it is. So we're going to see if iNat can tell me what it is. So again, I start up my iNaturalist app, and I come over here, and I find my flower, my bunny cage here. This is my pretty flower head. This is a really neat flower. This is just a flower head, but actually all the flowers are the little teeny tiny parts right there. So I'm going to, again, pinch a little bit, and I'm going to come and take a picture of my flower in the sunshine as much as I can. And the thing about sunflowers is that I also want to take a picture of the leaves. So I'm going to tap a little plus here to add another picture, and I'm going to pinch again, and I'm going to take a picture of the leaf. I'm in the shadow. Let me come over this way. I'm going to take a picture of the leaf. And I'm going to click next. What did I see? And this tells me it's cowpen daisy. And I know that I planted cowpen daisy here. So that is what I'm going to select and share with the world. All right, so I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to catch a bee, a fly, or a wasp. You don't have to be scared about them stinging you because they're foraging. They're not protecting their nest. They're just looking for food for their babies. Now this is a little patch of blackjack, which is a daisy. And there are some honeybees on this blackjack. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to walk up to a flower with a honeybee on it, and I'm going to slide this over the top. So we're going to keep walking, looking for a honeybee. Here's one right here. See how easy that was? And now I have a honeybee in my jar, and I can look at him. And then when it's time to let him go, I just simply take the lid off and let him crawl out, and he's going to fly away. I'm retaking images because he keeps falling into the shadow. There we go. Okay, I think I've got an image I can use. I'm going to click next. And what did I see? And what do you know? Asian honeybee is not what we have here. If I tap the information part of Asian honeybee and I look where it is, that's in Asia. Here is not where the Asian honeybee is. I know that this is the Western honeybee, which is an invasive bee here in America. It was brought over by the Europeans, but unfortunately they do pollinate all of our crops. And lo and behold, in North America, that is where they are now. And we will select Western honeybee and share it. Oh, there's no location here. I'm gonna touch the little location icon and then share it, and I am done. All right, so I'm going to show you how to take a picture of an insect without pinching. That is, without touching your screen at all. So here's the insects. I can come in pretty close. If I come in too close, it gets out of focus. So I'm going to back up. I can back up even more if I want to until it's nice and crisp. And then I'll take a picture. Let's try another one. Take a picture. And then I'm going to tap on my picture and edit it. And then I tap on the rotation icon over here to the right. And then I pinch this one in. And then I press done. And now I have a super crisp, beautiful image that I can use to identify this insect using iNaturalist.